Welcome back to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Evangelical Alliance Ireland. Over the last 3 days, we've been looking at how Jesus directly encountered the hungry, the needy multitudes, and restored a lapsed Jew. We looked at how the early disciples in the early church followed in Jesus' footsteps, despite trials and famine, continuing to practically care for vulnerable people and sharing all that they had in common. What we saw was a radical and bold expression of their faith in Jesus, the integration of faith in action in their lives, regardless of status and circumstances. So what's happened in the last 2,000 years to bring about the disintegration or the compartmentalization in our lives and faith in action in our lives as disciples, especially when it comes to our money, wealth, and possessions? I found David Smith's new book, God or Mammon, very helpful in understanding this better. The title of his book, God or Mammon, is of course taken from the very words of Jesus, which warn of the incompatibility of serving God and serving Mammon. Smith's definition of mammon is not limited to a single coin that Jesus uses as an illustration in both the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, but of a dominant global force in which economic and commercial values literally seek to displace God. It literally has the power to create false idols and misalign allegiance to God. Instead of trusting God daily for our bread, the alternative framework advocates building up wealth here on earth, literally storing up wealth in barns or bank accounts or property, and at any cost to our neighbours. The author takes many chapters and hundreds of pages to unpack this monumental shift and detailing the cultural forces and influences at play throughout the ages. He borrows on a model identifying the 5 key stages in the gradual undermining of radical faith-based living and the elevation of money and wealth and prestige as the ultimate value and indicator for nations and its citizens. Smith pinpoints an expanding Europe from the 15th century on as the critical stage. He describes it as the centuries-long emergence of what now we call the modern world, and ultimately giving rise to the capitalist economy, which develops and expands in a way that lays the foundation for the world which we now inhabit. Smith describes this capitalist economic system as becoming the dominant world system. So it is this dominant capitalistic economic system that seeks to usurp God from his preeminent yet unassuming place as Lord of the universe and of our lives. It is not a new way of undermining God. After all, the Apostle Paul lived and worked amongst people in pluralistic cultures. However, the cultural influences of our day go way beyond what Paul and the other disciples of Jesus encountered. Smith goes on to quote from a professional economist, Jane Collier, who describes the conflict between God and Mammon, or the dominant economic system, as follows. It is not that it prevents the profession of faith, but that the realization of belief in daily life involves a painful struggle to overcome the obstacles thrown up by the prevailing ideology. Thank you for listening in, and join us tomorrow where I'm going to talk specifically about Christmas time and how we can be more empowered to overcome this struggle and instead live more intentionally with greater joy, especially when it comes to money and wealth. Thank you.